I found the termination notice taped to my front door on a Tuesday morning in late March, written on expensive letterhead that made my blood pressure spike before I even read the first sentence. The Oakmont Hills Homeowners Association, located in our pristine gated community just outside Charlotte, North Carolina, was demanding immediate payment of $3,000 for what they called overdue special assessments. I stood there in my bathrobe, coffee mug in hand, reading the notice 3 times because it made absolutely no sense. My name is Xavier Langston, and I had lived at 4782 Meadowbrook Lane for 6 years without missing a single HOA payment. I kept meticulous records because people like Brenda Morrison, our HOA president, loved finding reasons to fine residents. I pulled out my phone and called my wife Jennifer before she left for her nursing shift at Presbyterian Hospital. "Jen, did you see this notice?" "What notice?" Her voice was distracted, probably searching for her car keys like she did every morning. "The HOA is saying we owe $3,000. They are threatening to put a lien on the house." That got her attention. $3,000? For what? Special assessments, apparently. But I have never received any notification about special assessments. Jennifer went quiet for a moment. "Xavier, check the community forum. I saw someone posting about this last week, but I thought it was just the usual complaining." I hung up and immediately opened the Oakmont Hills Facebook group on my phone. What I found made my stomach drop. Dozens of homeowners were furious about the same notices. People were posting photos of their letters, all demanding payment for assessments that nobody could remember voting on or even being informed about. The comment section was a mess of angry residents, confusion, and accusations. "Did anyone actually approve these assessments?" wrote Tom Chen from Willowbrook Court. "I have been to every board meeting this year, and they never mentioned this," commented Sarah Williams. "Brenda Morrison is out of control," added Marcus Rodriguez. "This is the 3rd time she has tried to sneak through fee increases." I screenshot several posts and started digging through my own records. Every HOA payment I had made was documented in my files, organized by date in a folder I kept specifically for this purpose. The last official communication I had received from the board was in January, discussing pool maintenance for the summer season, nothing about special assessments, nothing about needing additional funds. My phone rang. It was Derek Patterson, my neighbor from 2 houses down. "Xavier, you get one of those letters?" "Yeah, just found it. This is insane. I'm organizing a meeting at my place tonight, 7 o'clock. We need to figure out what Brenda is doing with our money because something smells rotten." Derek worked as an accountant, and if anyone could spot financial irregularities, it was him. "I will be there," I said. The rest of the day dragged as I tried to focus on work. I did software consulting from home, which usually meant flexible hours and low stress, but I kept checking the Facebook group every 20 minutes. The number of angry posts kept growing. By noon, over 60 homeowners had confirmed receiving the same notice. Our community had 240 homes total, which meant a significant portion of residents were being hit with this demand. At 6:30, I walked down to Derek's house. His living room was already packed with neighbors, most of whom I recognized from community events, but had never really talked to beyond polite waves. Derek had set up folding chairs, and his wife Michelle was handing out printouts of something. "Glad you could make it," Derek said, shaking my hand. "Take a seat. We're going to start in a few minutes." I grabbed one of the printouts. It was a timeline Derek had compiled, documenting every official HOA communication over the past 18 months. He had highlighted in yellow every mention of finances, assessments, or special projects. There were exactly 0 references to the $3,000 assessment we were all supposedly required to pay. "All right, everyone, let us get started," Derek announced, standing at the front of the room. The conversations died down. "I know we are all angry, but we need to approach this strategically. First, can everyone here confirm they received a notice demanding payment?" Every hand went up. "And how many of you remember voting on or being informed about a special assessment before receiving this letter?" Not a single hand. Derek nodded grimly. "That's what I thought. According to our HOA bylaws, which I reviewed this afternoon, any special assessment over $500 requires a vote from the membership, not just the board, the actual homeowners. This was never put to a vote. So what is Brenda doing with the money? asked Maria Santos, who lived on the corner of Oakmont and Birch Street. That is exactly what we need to find out, Derek said. I made a formal request this afternoon for copies of all financial records for the past 2 years. As homeowners, we have the legal right to review those documents. Brenda has 10 business days to provide them. 10 days? Tom Chen stood up. We are supposed to pay this assessment in 5 days according to the letter, or face penalties. They cannot demand payment before we even have a chance to verify the charges are legitimate. Which is why nobody should pay anything yet, Derek said firmly. I spoke with an attorney friend this afternoon. If this assessment was not properly approved, we have grounds to challenge it, but we need those financial records first. I raised my hand. What if Brenda refuses to hand them over? Then we file a complaint with the state. North Carolina has specific laws governing HOA operations. They cannot just do whatever they want. The meeting continued for another hour, with everyone sharing their frustrations about Brenda's leadership. She had been HOA president for 3 years, elected mainly because nobody else wanted the job. At first, she seemed fine, just overly enthusiastic about enforcing rules. But over time, her behavior had become increasingly controlling. She sent violation notices for the pettiest things: trash cans visible from the street 30 minutes past pickup time, mailbox numbers that were half an inch too small, car repairs happening in driveways. People had started calling her Brenda the Terrible behind her back. I still do not understand what she needs the money for, Michelle Patterson said. Our HOA fees already cover everything. We have a healthy reserve fund. What kind of emergency would require $3,000 from every homeowner? That is $720,000 total if everyone pays, I calculated out loud. What could possibly cost that much in our community? Nobody had an answer. I walked home around 9, my mind racing. Jennifer was already in bed, exhausted from her shift, so I tried to be quiet as I got ready for bed. But I could not sleep. I kept doing the math. $720,000. That was not routine maintenance money. That was not even new amenity money. That was major construction or renovation budget. The next morning, I decided to do some reconnaissance. I got in my car and drove slowly through the neighborhood, looking for any signs of construction, repairs, or upgrades that might justify such a massive assessment. The pool looked fine. The clubhouse appeared normal. The landscaping was the same as always. I drove past the tennis courts, the playground, the dog park. Everything looked exactly as it had for years. Then I drove past Brenda Morrison's house on Estates Drive, one of the larger properties in the development. Her house sat on a corner lot with a circular driveway, much bigger than my standard suburban home. As I rolled past, I noticed something odd. There was a construction dumpster in her driveway. I slowed down, trying to see more without being obvious. The garage door was open, and I could see stacks of what looked like kitchen cabinets and boxes of tile. My heart started pounding. I pulled over a few houses down and grabbed my phone, pretending to check something while I watched Brenda's house in my rearview mirror. A white contractor van was parked on the street with Premier Kitchen and Bath Remodeling printed on the side. I took several photos with my phone, making sure to capture the company name, the dumpster, and the materials visible in the garage. Then I texted Derek. You need to see this. Driving past Brenda's house right now. Major renovation happening. 3 dots appeared immediately. On my way. Derek arrived in his silver Honda 10 minutes later. I met him on the sidewalk a few houses down from Brenda's place. Look, I said, pointing. That is a full kitchen remodel. Those are custom cabinets. This is not cheap work. Derek's jaw tightened. The timing is interesting, is it not? Special assessment notices go out, and suddenly she is renovating her kitchen. We need more than speculation, I said. But this definitely looks suspicious. Let me make some calls, Derek said, already pulling out his phone. I know someone who works in construction. Maybe he can give us an estimate on what a job like this would cost. We watched for a few more minutes as 2 workers carried what looked like a marble countertop section into the house. Everything about the renovation screamed expensive. That afternoon, Derek texted me. My guy estimates $20,000 to $30,000 for a high-end kitchen remodel based on what we saw, maybe more if she did structural changes. I sat back in my desk chair, trying to process this. Even $30,000 was nowhere near $700,000. but it was still a huge sum, and the timing was too coincidental to ignore. The Facebook group continued to explode with activity. People were now openly calling for Brenda to resign. Several homeowners had started researching how to recall a board president. The anger was reaching a boiling point. On Thursday, Derek received a response to his request for financial records. It was not the documents, it was a letter from Brenda's attorney stating that the records were being compiled and would be provided in due course. The letter also warned against defamatory statements being made on social media. "She lawyered up," Derek told me over the phone. "That tells me she has something to hide." What do we do now? I already filed a complaint with the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. They oversee HOA disputes, and I am moving forward with requesting an emergency homeowner meeting. If we can get 20% of residents to sign the petition, we can force a meeting and potentially vote her out. I immediately volunteered to help collect signatures. Over the next 3 days, I walked the neighborhood with a clipboard, knocking on doors and explaining the situation. Almost everyone I talked to was eager to sign. Many had their own horror stories about Brenda's tyrannical management style. "She fined me $200 because my son left his bike on the lawn overnight," one father told me. A bike. It was not even visible from the street. "She threatened to sue me because my fence was supposedly 6 inches too tall," another neighbor said. "I had to hire a surveyor to prove she was wrong. Cost me $500. The stories kept coming, painting a picture of a woman who wielded her small amount of power like a weapon. By Sunday evening, we had signatures from 60 homeowners, more than enough to trigger the emergency meeting. Derek submitted the petition Monday morning. According to the bylaws, Brenda had to schedule the meeting within 15 days. We waited for her response. Instead of scheduling the meeting, Brenda sent out another mass email to all homeowners on Tuesday. The subject line read, "Addressing false rumors and speculation." The email was 3 paragraphs of corporate speak, essentially saying that the special assessment was properly authorized and necessary for critical infrastructure improvements. She did not specify what improvements. She also included a thinly veiled threat about taking legal action against anyone spreading malicious lies about the board or its members. "She is stalling," Jennifer said that night as we read the email together. "She knows people are onto her." Derek says we should start documenting everything. Every email, every letter, every interaction. If this goes to court, we will need evidence. Jennifer looked worried. "You really think this will go to court?" "I think we are talking about potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars being misused. Yeah, this could get legal really fast." The following day, Wednesday, I decided to take another drive past Brenda's house. The dumpster was gone, which meant the project was progressing quickly. But now there was a different van parked outside. Lux Appliance Installation. I took more photos and sent them to Derek. An hour later, he called me. "Xavier, I need you to do something that might be a little questionable." "How questionable?" "I need you to call Premier Kitchen and Bath Remodeling and pretend you are interested in hiring them. Ask about their recent projects. Get them talking about the Morrison job. See if you can get any information about cost, timeline, anything." I hesitated. "Is that legal?" "You are just calling a business and asking about their services. Completely legal. I would do it myself, but my number might be recognized. Use a Google Voice number if you are worried." I thought about it for a moment, then agreed. I set up a temporary number and called Premier Kitchen and Bath Remodeling that afternoon. A woman answered. "Premier Kitchen and Bath, this is Jessica. How can I help you?" "Hi, Jessica. My name is Xavier. I'm looking into getting my kitchen remodeled, and I saw one of your vans in my neighborhood. Oakmont Hills?" "Oh yes, we're doing a beautiful project there right now. Are you in the same community?" "I am, actually. I saw the work being done and it looked really high-end. Is that the kind of project you typically do?" Jessica launched into a sales pitch about their premium services, custom cabinetry, imported stone, professional installation. I let her talk, asking occasional questions to keep her engaged. "The project you are doing in Oakmont Hills, is that similar to what I would be looking at for a full kitchen renovation?" "The Morrison project. Oh, that's definitely top of the line. Custom everything. Italian marble countertops, professional grade appliances, the works. If you are looking for something similar, we could definitely help you. Those jobs typically run between 40 and 60,000, depending on the square footage and specific selections. My heart was racing. 40 to 60,000? That's quite an investment. It is, but the Morrison kitchen is going to be absolutely stunning when it is done. We are talking about a complete transformation. Mrs. Morrison had very specific tastes, wanted everything to be perfect. I bet. Well, let me discuss this with my wife and I will get back to you. Can you send me some information? Jessica took down my email address and promised to send a brochure. As soon as I hung up, I called Derek. She confirmed it, I told him. Brenda is getting a $40,000 to $60,000 kitchen remodel. The contractor called it the Morrison Project specifically. Derek was silent for a moment. We need to find out how she paid for it. If there's any connection between HOA funds and that renovation, we have her. How do we prove that without the financial records? We might not need them, Derek said slowly. Think about it. We have photo evidence of the renovation happening right after she sent out the assessment notices. We have contractor confirmation of the project and approximate cost. If we can get receipts or payment information, we can match them against HOA expenditures. But how do we get receipts? I am still working on that, Derek admitted. But in the meantime, we keep documenting everything. The emergency homeowner meeting was finally scheduled for the following Wednesday evening at the clubhouse. Brenda had waited until the last possible day allowed by the bylaws, clearly hoping people would lose interest or momentum. Instead, the delay had only made everyone angrier. I arrived at the clubhouse 30 minutes early and found it already half full. Derek was setting up a projector and laptop at the front. We were expecting a big turnout, he told me. I rented extra chairs. By 7 o'clock, the room was packed with well over 100 residents. People were standing along the walls, sitting on the floor, crowding in the doorway. I had never seen this many neighbors assembled in one place. The energy was tense, electric. Brenda walked in at exactly 7, flanked by the other 2 board members, Carl Henderson, the vice president, and Patricia Webb, the secretary. Both of them looked deeply uncomfortable. Brenda, however, walked with her chin up, carrying a leather portfolio like she was heading into a corporate boardroom. She was exactly what you would picture when you heard the phrase HOA president. Mid-50s, expensive highlighted haircut in a severe bob, designer glasses, and clothing that cost more than most people spent on a week of groceries. She had that particular expression of someone who genuinely believed they were better than everyone around them. Derek called the meeting to order. Thank you everyone for coming. We are here tonight to address serious concerns about the recent special assessment and the overall financial management of our HOA. Brenda, we have formally requested financial records and have not received them. Can you explain why? Brenda stood up, smoothing her blouse. The records are being prepared by our accountant. These things take time. You will receive them when they are ready. The bylaws state you have 10 business days. It has been 12. As I said, they are being prepared. Now, regarding the special assessment, this was properly authorized by the board for necessary infrastructure improvements. What improvements? Someone shouted from the back. Various projects that have been identified as critical to maintaining property values and community standards. That is not an answer, Derek said firmly. We need specifics. Where is this $700,000 going? Brenda's expression tightened. The board is not required to justify every expenditure to the general membership. You elected us to make these decisions on your behalf. The room erupted. People were shouting over each other, demanding answers, accusing Brenda of lying. She just stood there with her arms crossed, waiting for the noise to die down. I raised my hand and stood up when Derek pointed to me. Brenda, can you explain why you are doing a major kitchen renovation right now? Seems like interesting timing. The room went quiet. All eyes turned to Brenda. Her face flushed red. My personal property and how I choose to improve it is none of your business. It is when you are demanding $3,000 from every homeowner right before starting a $50,000 remodel, I shot back. More shouting. Brenda looked at her attorney who was sitting in the front row. He whispered something to her. I do not have to answer these accusations, Brenda said loudly. This meeting is over. No, it is not, Derek said. We called this meeting, not you. Sit down. For a moment, I thought Brenda might actually leave, but her attorney put a hand on her arm and she sat down stiffly. Derek continued. I'm making a formal motion to suspend the special assessment until a full independent audit of HOA finances can be conducted. All in favor? A forest of hands shot up. It was nearly unanimous. Motion passes, Derek announced. I'm also making a motion to remove Brenda Morrison from her position as president, effective immediately, based on a loss of confidence by the membership. You cannot do that, Brenda sputtered. That is not how this works. Actually, according to Article 7, Section 3 of our bylaws, the membership can remove any board member with a 2/3 majority vote. All in favor of removing Brenda Morrison? Again, hands everywhere. I did a quick count. It had to be at least 80% of the room. Motion passes, Derek said. Brenda, you are no longer HOA president. Brenda stood up, shaking with rage. This is illegal. I will sue every single one of you. You have no idea what you have just done. She grabbed her portfolio and stormed out, her attorney hurrying after her. Carl and Patricia remained seated, looking shell-shocked. Derek turned to them. Carl, as vice president, you are now acting president. Do you have any objection to cooperating with an independent audit? Carl shook his head quickly. No objection. I had no idea what Brenda was doing with the finances. She kept me completely in the dark. Same here, Patricia added. She told us the assessment was for roof repairs on the clubhouse. I never saw any actual documentation. The meeting continued for another hour as we worked out the details of the audit and discussed next steps. A forensic accountant was recommended by one of the homeowners who worked in banking. We agreed to hire them immediately, with costs to come from the existing HOA reserve fund rather than a new assessment. I left the meeting feeling energized but also nervous. Brenda's threat to sue had sounded real, and she clearly had money for lawyers. The next morning, Derek got the call we had been hoping for. Carl Henderson had access to the HOA bank accounts and was willing to share the login credentials with Derek and the auditor. Within an hour, Derek was looking at every transaction made in the past 2 years. He called me at noon, his voice tight. Xavier, you need to come over here right now. Bring your laptop. I drove to his house and found him in his home office, spreadsheets open across 2 monitors. Look at this, he said, pointing to a highlighted column. It was a series of payments made from the HOA operating account to something called Oakmont Infrastructure LLC. The payments started in January and continued monthly through March. Each payment was for varying amounts, $12,000, $18,000, $25,000. They totaled just over $53,000. Okay, I said slowly. What is Oakmont Infrastructure LLC? That is the question I asked myself, Derek said. So I did a business entity search through the North Carolina Secretary of State website. Want to guess who registered Oakmont Infrastructure LLC in December? I already knew the answer. Brenda Morrison. Brenda Morrison, Derek confirmed. She created a shell company, then used her position as HOA president to authorize payments to her own company. And look at this. He clicked to another spreadsheet. These are the dates of the payments. Now look at these. He pulled up a folder of photos on his phone, the ones I had taken of Brenda's house. The dates aligned perfectly. Every payment to Oakmont Infrastructure LLC corresponded with visible progress on Brenda's kitchen renovation. She was not even subtle about it, I said in disbelief. She just funneled HOA money directly into her remodel. It gets better, Derek said grimly. The forensic accountant started this morning and already found more irregularities. There are payments to a landscaping company that does not exist, a security consulting firm that has no website or phone number, and a legal services company that, surprise, is also registered to Brenda. How much total? We are looking at close to $90,000 that can be directly traced to companies Brenda owns, and that is just what we found in the first 3 hours. The auditor thinks there might be more. I sat down heavily in Derek's desk chair. We need to call the police. Already ahead of you. I have a meeting with a detective tomorrow morning. This is not just HOA drama anymore. This is embezzlement, fraud, probably a dozen other charges. That evening, I told Jennifer everything. She listened quietly, her nurse training kicking in as she processed the information calmly and methodically. How did she think she would get away with this? Jennifer asked. People were obviously going to notice. I think she thought she could bully everyone into compliance, I said. She's gotten away with smaller power plays for years. Why would this be different? Pride comes before the fall, Jennifer murmured. Friday morning, Derek met with Detective Ryan O'Connor from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. Derek brought printed bank statements, the business registration documents for Brenda's shell companies, photos of the renovation, and the recording from Jessica at Premier Kitchen and Bath, confirming the project cost. Detective O'Connor was in his early 40s, with the tired eyes of someone who had seen too many cases of people doing stupid things with other people's money. He listened to Derek's presentation, asked several clarifying questions, and then leaned back in his chair. "This is pretty clear-cut," he said. "We will need the full audit results, but based on what you are showing me, there is probable cause for fraud and embezzlement charges. How many homeowners are in your association?" 240, O'Connor whistled. So she was planning to collect $700,000 in fake assessments on top of the money she already stole. That shows intent to continue the fraud. That is going to matter to the DA. "What happens now?" Derek asked. "Idika, I need to get a warrant for her financial records, both personal and business. We will cross-reference her bank deposits with the HOA payments, get statements from contractors working on her house, build the full case. This will take a few weeks, but based on what you have shown me, I am confident we can get charges filed." Derek called me as soon as he left the police station. "It is happening. They are building a case." Word spread through the neighborhood fast. By that evening, the Facebook group was celebrating. People were posting champagne emojis and thanking Derek for his work. But there was also an undercurrent of anger. $90,000 was a lot of money, and it had come from HOA fees that everyone had paid in good faith. The following week was quiet on the Brenda front, but the audit continued. The forensic accountant, a woman named Linda Ramirez who had worked on corporate fraud cases, was methodically going through 3 years of records. She had expanded the timeline after finding suspicious transactions dating back further than we had initially thought. I went back to my normal routine, trying to focus on work and family, but it was hard to concentrate knowing what was unfolding. Every few hours, I would check the Facebook group or text Derek for updates. On Tuesday afternoon, Derek called with news. Linda found the receipts. "What receipts?" "For Brenda's kitchen. She paid Premier Kitchen and Bath with checks from Oakmont Infrastructure LLC, which was funded entirely by HOA payments. Linda has copies of every check, every invoice, every receipt. The numbers match perfectly." "So we have proof." "Absolute, undeniable proof. The invoice from Premier Kitchen and Bath is for $52,800. The total amount paid to Oakmont Infrastructure LLC from HOA funds is $53,200. She paid for her entire kitchen remodel with our money." I felt a surge of vindication mixed with fury. "When does this go to the DA?" "Linda is finishing her report this week. Detective O'Connor said once he has the complete audit, he will present everything to the district attorney's office. They will decide what charges to file." That night, I could not stop thinking about Brenda's audacity. She had looked us all in the eye, threatened us with lawsuits, acted offended by our accusations, all while knowing she had literally stolen tens of thousands of dollars. The narcissism required for that level of deception was staggering. On Thursday, the audit was completed. Linda presented her findings at another emergency homeowner meeting, this one even more packed than the last. She went through everything methodically, the fake companies, the diverted funds, the receipts that proved HOA money paid for Brenda's personal renovation. The total amount stolen was $94,600 over a 2-year period. The kitchen remodel was the single largest expense, but there were others. Brenda had paid for landscaping at her personal residence, bought furniture, even paid for a vacation to Hilton Head using HOA funds routed through her shell companies. "How did she hide this from the other board members?" someone asked. Linda adjusted her glasses. "She was the sole signatory on the HOA accounts. Carl and Patricia had access to view the accounts, but not to see the detailed invoices or receipts. Brenda told them the payments were for legitimate expenses, and they trusted her. It was not until Carl gave us full access that we could see the actual paper trail." "What about our annual budget meetings?" another homeowner asked. "Do we not review finances then?" You review summaries, Linda explained. Brenda would present general categories: maintenance, legal fees, landscaping. The numbers looked reasonable on paper. She was careful to keep the theft spread out enough that nothing jumped out as obviously wrong. It was only when we did a deep forensic review that the patterns became clear. The room was silent as people absorbed this. Someone we had elected, someone we had trusted to manage our community, had systematically robbed us for 2 years. Carl Henderson stood up, looking pale. I want to apologize to everyone here. I should have been more diligent. I should have asked more questions. I failed in my responsibility as vice president. You were lied to, Derek said firmly. Brenda manipulated everyone. That is on her, not you. The meeting ended with a discussion about recovering the stolen funds. Linda had already identified most of Brenda's assets: her house, 2 cars, some investment accounts. If the criminal case went forward, there would likely be restitution ordered as part of any sentence. The HOA could also file a civil lawsuit to recover damages. On Monday morning, Detective O'Connor called Derek. We are executing a search warrant at Morrison's residence this afternoon. Just wanted to give you a heads up in case neighbors see police activity. I happened to be driving past Brenda's street around 3 o'clock when I saw the police cars. 3 unmarked vehicles and 1 patrol car were parked in front of her house. Officers were carrying boxes out to a van. Neighbors had gathered on lawns, watching. I slowed down but did not stop. I did not want to be accused of gawking, even though I desperately wanted to know what was happening. I texted Derek instead. Police are at Brenda's house right now, he responded immediately. I know. O'Connor said they are seizing financial records and electronics, building the evidence chain for prosecution. That evening, the local news ran a brief story about it. Charlotte HOA president under investigation for embezzlement was the headline on WCNC's website. They did not name Brenda, but they mentioned Oakmont Hills and included footage of the police activity. The story went semi-viral on local social media, with people sharing it and commenting about their own terrible HOA experiences. 2 weeks later, Brenda Morrison was formally charged with embezzlement, wire fraud, and theft by deception. The charges covered the full $94,000 identified in the audit, with each fake company payment counting as a separate act of fraud. If convicted on all counts, she faced up to 20 years in prison. Her arraignment was scheduled for a Friday morning in late April. Derek and I both took the morning off to attend. The courtroom was small, with maybe 30 seats in the gallery. About a dozen Oakmont Hills residents showed up, wanting to see Brenda face consequences. She walked in wearing a conservative navy suit, her hair pulled back, looking nothing like the imperious HOA president we had known. Her attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit, walked beside her. They approached the bench, and the judge read the charges. How does the defendant plead? The judge asked. Not guilty, Your Honor, Brenda said clearly. Of course she pleaded not guilty. Her attorney immediately asked for a trial date, arguing that his client was innocent and looked forward to clearing her name. The judge set a trial for August and discussed bail terms. Your Honor, my client is not a flight risk, the attorney argued. She has deep roots in the community, owns property locally, and has no criminal record. We request she be released on her own recognizance. The prosecutor, a young woman named Amanda Chen, stood up. Your Honor, the defendant stole nearly $100,000 from her neighbors over a 2-year period. She created multiple shell companies to hide the theft and showed clear intent to steal significantly more through fraudulent assessments. She has both the means and motivation to flee. The state requests bail be set at $100,000. The judge thought for a moment. Bail is set at $75,000. The defendant is to surrender her passport and is prohibited from accessing any HOA funds or accounts. Next case. Brenda's attorney helped her stand, and they left through a side door. I caught a glimpse of her face as she passed. She looked furious, not remorseful. Still convinced she was the victim somehow. Outside the courthouse, Derek and I talked with a few other homeowners who had attended. Think she will actually go to trial? Asked Tom Chen. Her lawyer's probably going to push for a plea deal, I said. Once he sees all the evidence, he will know she cannot win. That prediction proved accurate. Over the next 2 months, as the prosecution compiled their case, Brenda's attorney tried several times to negotiate a deal. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, receipts, contractor statements, the audit report, emails where Brenda had authorized payments to her fake companies using HOA funds. There was no plausible defense. In late June, just 6 weeks before the scheduled trial, Brenda accepted a plea agreement. She pleaded guilty to 1 count of embezzlement and 1 count of wire fraud in exchange for the other charges being dropped. The sentencing hearing was set for mid-July. Jennifer and I attended the sentencing along with Derek and at least 40 other Oakmont Hills residents. The courtroom was packed. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Whitmore, listened as the prosecutor laid out the full scope of Brenda's crimes. Amanda Chen spoke clearly and forcefully. "Your Honor, this was not a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a calculated, sustained theft from people who trusted the defendant to manage their community. She created fake companies, falsified records, and when confronted, she threatened and intimidated the victims. She showed no remorse, even attempting to collect an additional $700,000 through fraudulent assessments after she had already stolen nearly $100,000. Brenda's attorney tried to paint her in a sympathetic light. "Your Honor, my client made serious mistakes, which she now acknowledges. She has suffered tremendously from the public exposure of these events. She has lost her position, her reputation, and her standing in the community. She is prepared to make full restitution and asks the court for leniency." Judge Whitmore looked skeptical. "Ms. Morrison, would you like to address the court?" Brenda stood up. She had clearly been coached on what to say. "Your Honor, I take full responsibility for my actions. I made terrible decisions, and I hurt people who trusted me. I am deeply sorry, and I want to do everything I can to make this right." The words sounded hollow, rehearsed. Judge Whitmore seemed to think so too. "Ms. Morrison, I have reviewed the evidence in this case extensively," the judge said. "What strikes me is not just the amount of money you stole, but the systematic nature of your theft and your complete lack of remorse until you were caught. You had multiple opportunities to come clean, to stop, to make things right. Instead, you doubled down and tried to steal even more." Judge Whitmore consulted her notes. "You stole from people who paid their fees in good faith, who trusted you to act in their best interests. Some of those people are elderly, on fixed incomes. Some are young families just starting out. You took their money and spent it on luxury renovations for yourself. That shows a profound lack of character and integrity." She paused. "I am sentencing you to 4 years in state prison, followed by 3 years of probation. You are ordered to pay full restitution of $94,600 to the Oakmont Hills Homeowners Association. Additionally, you are barred from serving in any HOA leadership position in the future. Do you understand these terms?" Brenda's face went white. "Yes, Your Honor," she whispered. "Bailiff, please take the defendant into custody." Brenda's attorney jumped up. "Your Honor, we request my client be allowed to self-surrender in 30 days to get her affairs in order." "Request denied. She is remanded immediately." 2 bailiffs approached Brenda and placed her in handcuffs. She started crying, real tears now, as the reality set in. They led her out through a side door. Her attorney stood there looking frustrated, gathering his papers. Outside the courthouse, there was almost a carnival atmosphere among the Oakmont Hills residents. People were hugging, shaking hands, taking photos. Justice had been served. Derek put his arm around my shoulder. "We did it, man. We actually did it." "You did most of it," I said honestly. "You organized everything, got the audit, went to the police. This would not have happened without you." "No way," Derek said firmly. "This was all of us. Everyone who showed up to meetings, who signed petitions, who refused to be bullied. We won because we stood together." The weeks after sentencing were busy. The new HOA board, with Carl Henderson as president and several newly elected members, worked on recovering the stolen funds. Brenda's house was put up for sale, with the proceeds going toward restitution. Her cars were sold, investment accounts were liquidated. By September, the HOA had recovered about $70,000 of the $94,000 stolen. The remaining amount would come from Brenda through a payment plan as part of her probation, assuming she ever got out of prison and found employment. But the board decided not to wait. They used reserve funds to cover the gap and moved on. Life in Oakmont Hills slowly returned to normal, though changed. People were more engaged now, more aware. Board meetings that used to attract 5 or 6 people now regularly saw 30 or 40 attendees. Financial statements were scrutinized. Questions were asked and answered. The special assessment, of course, was canceled. Nobody owed the $3,000 Brenda had tried to collect. A few homeowners who had paid before we discovered the fraud were refunded immediately. Carl turned out to be a solid president, detail-oriented, but reasonable. He instituted new financial controls, dual signatures required on all checks over $500, quarterly financial reviews open to all homeowners, and an annual independent audit. The board also created a finance committee made up of homeowners with accounting and banking backgrounds to provide oversight. In October, I was walking my dog past Brenda's old house when I saw the sold sign go up. A young couple was outside measuring windows, talking excitedly about their new home. They had no idea about the history, about what had happened in that house with the brand new luxury kitchen. Jennifer and I talked about whether we should tell them, but ultimately decided against it. It was not their story to carry. They deserved to start fresh, to make their own memories in that house without the shadow of Brenda's crimes hanging over them. I did warn them about HOA politics, though, in a casual, neighborly way. Just stay involved, I told them. Go to the meetings, ask questions, keep an eye on the finances. It matters more than you think. They promised they would, probably not really understanding why I was being so emphatic about it. They would learn. The legal saga officially ended in November when the last of the restitution was paid and the case was closed. Brenda was in Anson Correctional Institution, a medium-security prison about 40 miles east of Charlotte, serving her 4 years. According to the state corrections website, her earliest possible release date was in 3 years with good behavior. I sometimes wondered if she thought about what she had done, if she regretted her choices. Probably not. People like Brenda rarely saw themselves as the villain. In her mind, she was probably still the victim, persecuted by ungrateful neighbors who did not appreciate all her hard work. But it did not matter what she thought anymore. She had faced consequences, real ones, and our community was better for it. The holidays came and Oakmont Hills looked beautiful. The new board had used some reserve funds to upgrade the Christmas decorations at the entrance, big, elegant wreaths and white lights that gave the community a welcoming glow. It felt like a new beginning. At the annual holiday party in December, held at the clubhouse, Derek gave a short speech thanking everyone who had stood up against corruption. We proved that when a community comes together, when people refuse to be intimidated or silenced, we can hold even the most powerful among us accountable. Brenda Morrison thought she was untouchable. She thought she could bully us into submission. She was wrong. The room erupted in applause. People were smiling, celebrating not just the holidays, but the fact that we had taken back our community from someone who had betrayed our trust. I stood next to Jennifer, holding a cup of terrible punch, and felt genuinely proud. Not of myself specifically, but of all of us. We had seen something wrong and we had not looked away. We had not made excuses or convinced ourselves it was not our problem. We had acted. That night, driving home through the decorated streets of Oakmont Hills, Jennifer reached over and squeezed my hand. "Crazy year," she said. "Insane year," I agreed. "But it ended okay." "Better than okay," she said. "You helped catch a criminal and saved everyone a lot of money. That's pretty heroic." I laughed. "I just took some photos and made some phone calls. Derek did the heavy lifting." "You both did," Jennifer said firmly. "And now you have the most interesting HOA story of anyone we know." She was right about that. At parties, when people complained about their HOA, sending them violation notices for mailbox colors or demanding approval for patio furniture, I would tell them about Brenda Morrison and the kitchen remodel scandal. Their jaws would drop. They would ask a million questions, and they would go home feeling a little better about their own annoying HOA president. Because at least their HOA president had not stolen $94,000 and bought Italian marble countertops with their money. The following spring, nearly a year after the initial termination, notices that had started everything, I was elected to the HOA board. I had not planned to run, but Derek convinced me the community needed people who understood the importance of transparency and accountability. I agreed to serve a 2-year term as treasurer, responsible for managing the finances and ensuring what happened with Brenda could never happen again. My first act was to set up an online portal where homeowners could view financial statements in real time. No more waiting for quarterly reports or annual meetings. Anyone could log in any time and see exactly where their money was going. Some of the older board members thought it was overkill, but I insisted. Trust had to be earned back, and transparency was how we did that. In April, I received a letter from Brenda's attorney. She was requesting that the HOA write a letter to the parole board supporting early release, claiming she had been a model prisoner and had learned from her mistakes. The letter included a handwritten note from Brenda herself, apologizing again and talking about how prison had changed her perspective. I brought the letter to the next board meeting. We discussed it for about 30 seconds before voting unanimously to decline. Brenda was serving a fair sentence for serious crimes. We were not going to help her get out early. Carl drafted a polite but firm response explaining our position. Whatever Brenda had learned in prison was between her and her conscience. We owed her nothing. Life continued. Seasons changed. The community moved forward. New families moved in, unaware of the drama that had unfolded just a year earlier. Kids played in the parks, people walked their dogs, neighbors chatted over fences about mundane things like lawn care and weather, but those of us who had lived through the Brenda Morrison era remembered. We remembered what happened when power went unchecked, when people looked the other way, when trust was abused. We remembered, and we stayed vigilant. The kitchen in Brenda's old house, the one she had stolen $94,000 to remodel, became something of a local legend. People would drive past and point it out to visitors. "That is where the HOA president remodeled her kitchen with everyone's money," they would say, and the story would be told again. It served as a reminder, a cautionary tale, a piece of neighborhood folklore that would probably outlast all of us. The house where pride and greed had led to handcuffs and prison time. The house where receipts matched and justice was served. In my quieter moments, I sometimes thought about how easily it all could have gone differently. If Derek had not been paying attention, if people had not showed up to meetings, if we had not pushed for the audit or gone to the police, Brenda might have gotten away with it. She might have collected that $700,000 assessment and disappeared to someplace without extradition. But that was not what happened. We caught her. We stopped her. We made sure she faced consequences. And that made all the difference. As I sat at my desk one evening in late May, exactly 2 years after finding that first termination notice on my door, I pulled up the HOA financial portal I had created. Every transaction was documented, categorized, transparent. The balance was healthy. Reserve funds were growing. Projects were being completed on budget and on time. It was not exciting. It was not dramatic. It was just responsible, competent management of a homeowners association. Exactly what it should have been all along. I closed the laptop and went to find Jennifer. She was in our kitchen, the one we had paid for ourselves with our own money, cooking dinner and humming along to music playing from her phone. "Hey," I said, wrapping my arms around her from behind. "Thanks for putting up with all the HOA craziness last year." She turned and kissed me. "Are you kidding? That was the most interesting thing that has happened to us since we moved here. I'm just glad it worked out." "Me too," I said. "Me too." Outside, the sun was setting over Oakmont Hills, casting long shadows across perfectly maintained lawns and freshly painted mailboxes. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A car door closed, normal sounds of a normal evening in a normal suburban neighborhood. But we knew better. We knew that normal was something you had to fight for sometimes, something you had to protect. We knew that behind every HOA notice and every board meeting and every assessment letter, there were real people and real money and real consequences. We had learned that lesson the hard way, and we would not forget it. The Brenda Morrison era was over. The receipts had matched, the evidence had been clear, and justice had been served. Our community was stronger for having survived it, wiser for having lived through it, and more united than we had ever been before. That was worth more than any luxury kitchen renovation could ever be.